So I always like to start off by explaining what it is that I do. So I'm a naturopathic doctor and an acupuncturist. A lot of people don't know that naturopathic medicine is licensed in 16 states, and we're licensed as primary care providers. That means we do physical exams, lab work, imaging, prescribe pharmaceuticals, but our focus is on natural therapies like botanical medicine, homeopathy, hydrotherapy, nutrition, diet, and those types of things. And then I'm also a licensed acupuncturist, so acupuncture and Chinese medicine is a big part of my practice. Naturopathic medicine is not currently licensed in Idaho, so I can't function as a primary care doctor here in Idaho, but because we're close to Washington, where I also have a practice in Liberty Lake, I'm pretty much able to do most of the things that I want to do here as far as ordering lab work. So today's lecture came about because I work on the floor in the Pilgrim's Market in the supplement section a few days a week, and I get a lot of customers who come up to me and they ask, what's the most important supplement for me to take? And of course, I see that in my practice as well. And I know a lot of it sometimes comes down to affordability, why people ask that question. There's so many different things out there. How do I know what to take? And I started looking at what it is that I routinely recommend. And I came up with that there's 3 major classes of supplements, or things that I see that we're really deficient in, that are really important to take into our bodies. And so that's why I came up with this lecture. These are my 3 pillars, and it's not necessarily a complete supplementation, but of nutrients that we're deficient in, that we need to work a little bit harder at ingesting. So I'm going to go through that. But as I was putting this together, I realized that there really is a much deeper thread that connects these 3 classes of nutrients. And I'd like for you to pay attention as we go through this talk so that you can see if you come up with that thread. And towards the end of the lecture, I'm going to ask you if you can pick up on what that is, and then we'll go a little bit deeper with this. One other thing about the way that I present, I'm not a professional lecturer. I put this lecture together, in the last couple of days. I have a busy practice, and so I do kind of rely on reading some of the material. I don't get a chance to to rehearse it and to go through it, but I really like the content that's in there, and I also really like the story that it has to tell. So I want you to kind of bear with me as we go through some of the slides, but I also like to interact with you. So I really want you to ask questions as we go through, as long as we get through the material. And I think I did a better job this time of not trying to write a whole thesis. So I think we might be able to get towards the end of this. So if you do have a question, just raise your hand, and then we'll try to go through it. And we will have a meal that my wife Brigitte and my son Lucas helped prepare last night, and we'll talk about that at the end. So if you stay through, we'll have some yummy food at the end. So the 3 main classes fall into the probiotics and fermented foods, different forms of lipids, and then fat-soluble vitamins. And we're going to tackle the probiotics first. So those are a mixture of probiotics. So probiotics are naturally occurring friendly bacteria that are an integral part of a healthy digestive system. They exist primarily in the small and large intestine, enhancing health in several key ways. It's 1 part us and 1 trillion them. 1 part us and 1 trillion. So there's 1 trillion times more probiotics living in our body. So these are a couple quotes from Dr. Catherine Shanahan, and she's the one who wrote the book Deep Nutrition that we have on display here. And I'm going to spend some time going through a couple excerpts from her book in this probiotics section. But then in the end, we're going to talk some more about her book and some other connections to what we're discussing today. So we supply the long hollow tube that begins at our mouth and coils for 12 meters or so inside our abdominal cavity until it ends at the rear. The microbial world populates the tube with enough bacteria and fungi to outnumber our own cells 10 to 1. The average human colon contains over 800 species of microbiota and at least 7,000 different strains. 60% of the fecal matter you produce consists of microbial bodies. So 60% of, when you have a bowel movement, 60% of that is bacteria and yeast and other microbiota. Are all these microbes just freeloaders, or do we somehow benefit from their presence? And I think we all know the answer to that. So the answer, and what boils down to why they're so important, is fermentation. So bacteria are capable of transforming indigestible, bland, and even toxic compounds into nourishing and delicious foods. So what are some examples of foods that we eat that are fermented?
Sauerkraut.
Wine, I heard yogurt, sauerkraut. Say it again? Kefir. Miso, kombucha. Come up with some more. Kimchi. Beer. Natto.
I want to say something too.
Okay.
Kombucha.
Yeah, yummy. Okay, so there's quite a bit of foods that we have that we currently have in our diet that we're aware of now. When it comes down to it, when we look at bacteria that are in our intestines, it's like an on-off switch. Inside of our intestines, all the different bacteria and funguses or yeast and fungi that live there, they make up a collective whole, and it's almost like it's whether either all on or all off, all good or all bad. And you see that, I see that all the time with patients. So somebody comes in and they have diarrhea, right? And it's persistent. It happens all of a sudden. Well, it could be because of, some bacteria that infected their coleslaw or potato salad this summer. But there are other reasons for that can turn that switch on or off, or switch the bacteria and the environment to being either good for us or bad for us. And the microbes in our digestive tract are making alliances and scheming against each other for control of your internal real estate. Anybody heard of biofilm? Raise your hand if you heard of biofilm. So there's quite a bit of research about biofilm, especially the last 10 years. And what it is it's a multi-layered bacterial population embedded in a polysaccharide matrix and attached to some surface. So the bacteria secrete this substance to protect and to form a colony so that they can avoid antibiotics or other things that are toxic to them. So it's like they wall themselves off to protect them. And this is an expression from a friend and colleague of mine, bugs in a bombshell. So, no, that's not a bombshell, bugs in a bomb shelter, so that they're sheltered so that they can't get hit by any arsenal that we try. But it is so much more than that, because it's not just taking antibiotics and trying to kill them. Like we said before, it's these different bacteria interacting with each other for dominance. And that's one of the reasons why it is really important for us to be introducing the good bacteria and to make sure that the good bacteria have control of our intestines. So that's a picture of some staphylococci, and you can see through here, that's the polysaccharide, which is, the polysaccharides are types of sugars, but it's kind of like mucus and phlegm, and that's kind of what it looks like in that close-up of that slide. So in general, probiotics help by assisting with food and nutrient assimilation, inhibiting harmful bacteria, and by stimulating the immune system. So the bacteria help us take the food that we eat and turn it into nutrients that we can use, and they also directly either push out by numbers by adhering to our intestines or our GI tract and keep the other bad bacteria from inhabiting them, and they fight them off. And they also help our whole immune system, not just in the intestine. Proper probiotic supplementation replaces intestinal tract organisms lost to if there is antibiotic use, other disease, poor diets, bad nutrition, stress. There are many, many factors that affect our digestive, our intestines. So in hospitals, 190 million doses of antibiotics are administered each day. Among non-hospitalized patients, more than 133 million courses of antibiotics are prescribed by doctors each year. So that's not each pill, but it's been prescribed 133 million, and this is in the United States. And it's estimated that 50% of these prescriptions are unnecessary since they are being prescribed for colds, coughs, and other viral infections. Consumer Reports points out that an incredible 80% of all antibiotic drugs sold in America are administered to mass-produced livestock to speed up their growth, or for disease prevention in crowded, unsanitary factory farms. So we just said, what did you say, 190 million and 133 million, right? So that, it's, what is it, 80 times more of that is being given to into our food supply. So we live in an environment which currently favors bad bacteria. We kill off our good bacteria with antibiotics, and also, all the hand sanitizers that people are using, that will have a similar effect. It will destroy the bacteria that are populating our skin, and it's the same. It's the same tissue. Our skin is the same tissue that goes into our digestive tract, and it's all connected inside and outside. And so I really would caution you to use those chemical hand sanitizers. Of course, there's a time and a place for sanitation, but there are natural products that we carry in this store, and other places have it, that use essential oils, and they kill 99%. So I would recommend judicial use of hand sanitizers. Our diets are very low in foods which are high in good bacteria. So we no longer eat dirt, right? Who lets their kids go out and eat dirt, right? So I've been at lectures and top naturopathic doctors or microbiologists who are lecturing to naturopathic doctors, and they say how important it was that we're just picking leaves off or fruit off or stuff off the ground, and we're eating it and getting the bacteria. So bacteria from the soil and from the plant life and from all around, right? So that's an important way of introducing bacteria. And if we are constantly going after that and killing that, or trying to be sanitary, or not sanitary, but if we're trying to eradicate all the germs, then we're also defeating the purpose of having the good germs work with us, and to crowd out or to use their defense mechanisms to keep the bad pathogens away. We eat foods that, particularly sugars, which feed and promote the growth of bad bacteria. We eat sugars like never before. Especially the last 100 years, or particularly the last 20 years. I mean, we all know about the diabetes and syndrome X and all the metabolic syndrome and overweight children, and we're heading in the wrong direction. And part of that is actually related to feeding the bad bacteria, or causing the dysbiosis, or the bad bacteria that's out of proportion in our GI tract. Poor nutrition, lack of proper vitamins and minerals, this all favors bad bacteria. So that's why we have so much digestive problems. So some of you have been to my lectures before. You may know that I have Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune condition that attacks the intestines. I was really sick. In fact, this is probably a good time to share this story. So I was really sick with Crohn's. This was right after college, and before I went on to medical school. And I had quite a bit of abdominal pain, diarrhea, vomiting, just horribly miserable, really sick. A lot of the medications couldn't help me. I didn't get any relief from that. And I really did have an amazing healing experience up in the mountains of Austria. So my wife's from the state called Tyrol in Austria, like near Innsbruck, or like in The Sound of Music. And her father was... there's something called an alm, which is kind of like cow camp, and they take their all the farmers are up on a mountain, and there's not a lot of space for each farmer to let their cows out to graze without infringing on other people's properties. What they do is they get all the cows, they bring them together, and they bring them up high up onto the mountain where they can graze. And so Brigitte's father offered that summer to kind of lead the cow camp, and got in over his head, so we came out to help for a couple weeks. Well, while I was up there for the first time, I stopped vomiting. I stopped having diarrhea, I stopped having pain. Really had an amazing healing experience up there on the mountain. I ate nothing but really pure, simple, unadulterated food, spelt flour, a lot of dairy up there, the mountain air, spring water, and I stopped eating the SAD diet. So some of you have been to my lectures before, you know what the SAD diet is. Those of you who haven't been to my lectures, throw a guess out what the SAD diet is. It's probably the most common, the most popular diet out there.
Sugar addiction diet.
Standard American diet. So, you know, that's pizza and Ho-Hos and Twinkies and pudding and soda and all of my favorite things growing up and even through college. So that was a huge shift, a huge change for me. And I came down off that mountain, and that's how I found out about naturopathic medicine and the profession that I got into. So I no longer take any medications. I'm doing really well. The reason I brought up about Crohn's disease is because of my personal experience. I work with a lot of people who have IBD, IBS, a lot of digestive problems. So I see a lot of people who come in who, out of the blue, they'll have digestive problems, they'll have diarrhea. And so I do know what I'm talking about, and I see this as being a major factor. And even if you don't have digestive problems, what we're learning is there's so many other things related to the bacteria. Even one of the most popular things that everybody comes to our supplement section for, which is weight loss. So they've actually found that certain classes of, I think there's three different, how do you describe it? Populations of bacteria that can like types that can populate the intestines, and they relate to whether you can become obese, or kind of like a genetic code, only it's through bacteria. And it's not necessarily that it's, some of it may be that it's secondary and related to what you eat, but there's definitely association to bacteria and weight loss and weight gain. And of course, obesity, diabetes, and these other inflammatory conditions. Okay, so here's your surprise, Lucas. Oh, no, go back. Oh, how do I go back?
We want it, Lucas. There. Lucas under. Oh, yum.
Oh. You guys, it's worth it. Okay. Let's play. So it's just for a couple moments, but it's Lucas eating dirt, or not necessarily eating dirt, but playing with dirt, really getting into the dirt. And I think that's really important, for children to be doing that. And I just had to show this. Who's that, Lucas?
Lucas.
You did eat a handful on that day.
Yeah. He's a big helper, and he still is. Okay. I go to the next one. Okay. So you can go after the bad guys with heavy ammunition, but it's my belief that this only worsens the problem. You must change the environment so that it supports the good guys and gives them an opportunity to win. It is an ongoing battle, but it's not one that I see won by heavy hitters. My father was a medical doctor, ended up specializing in chronic fatigue syndrome in the 80s. And so he was sort of a pioneer. And he used a lot of diflucan, nystatin, all these antifungals. He was even listed in that the Crook book. What is it called? The yeast syndrome? No.
Yeast connection.
The yeast connection. But I saw his approach, and a lot of people's approach is to keep going after to kill the yeast. That's not my belief. I really feel like, and I see it firsthand, because like I said, I work with a lot of people with severely harmed dysbiosis in their intestines, and we can do quite a bit to establish the good bacteria, and that will crowd out the bad bacteria, the bad fungi, because it's normal to have candida in your intestines. That's a normal microorganism that we're supposed to have. It's just the problem is when it gets out of proportion. And so there's a lot that we can do. And first on the list is making sure that we eat lots of different sources of probiotics, whether it's a supplement that you take, or whether it's from yogurt, from kimchi, from kombucha, from all these things that we listed. It's very, very important that we keep introducing that into our system on a regular basis. So one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that our body set a set point for what is normal bacteria in our intestines by the age of 2. And so if we have an antibiotic when you're a child, or if you're breastfeeding and the mother takes an antibiotic, or if you're getting antibiotic tainted meat, it disrupts the normal bacteria there. Well, by the age of 2, your body says, well, this is what's normal for me. It creates a set point so that as an adult, if you take an antibiotic, you kill off the bacteria. Well, we know we can repopulate it, right? And even if you take a probiotic supplement afterwards, it will eventually work towards going to that set point. So if your set point is off, if your set point is not a good harmonious relationship of microorganisms, then your body's always going to go back to that. You're always going to have problems. So this is going to be, because of the environment that we live in, that we kind of, for most people, screwed it up in the beginning. It's really, really important to always to continue to supplement with probiotics. So the details of what types and how much all depend on where you are in this battle, but everyone needs probiotics. So there's different strains and different types of probiotics I use depending on the situation. In general, you'll see my picture, like I like to put things that I recommend. It says one of Dr. Toby's favorites on some of the supplements we have out there. And in the refrigerated section, there's a product that I do like to use from New Chapter. It's called All Flora. That's a really good all-purpose probiotic, and I've used that clinically for a long time and have gotten good results. The yogurt that I highly recommend, that I see the best results from, is actually the Stonyfield Farm yogurt. And so for reasons we're going to talk about in the future, you really want to be able to make sure that your yogurt is grass-fed. And the Stonyfield doesn't say that, but most of the yogurt is grass-fed. It may not be 100%. And you want to and each person responds differently to different supplements and different yogurts. So you have to learn how to trust your body. Now, for people who are prone to having digestive problems, whether it's constipation, gas, bloating, or diarrhea, or whatever it may be, you can learn to listen to your body to see what is the best bacteria and how your body responds. But with time, you can get a good sense of what's working and what's not working, and pay attention to your bowel movements and make sure that they're regular and that they're well formed. This is going one step further. This is a abstract taken from. So you can do a lot of research. I encourage people to do research on their own, and I always like people to know where you can do that. So raise your hand if you used PubMed before. Okay, so PubMed, it's a free service from the government. It's www.pubmed.com, and then you can do any search. You can type anything in that you're looking for. And a lot of these articles will be free. Some of them will just be abstracts, but you can get a lot of information from the abstract. So this was a study that was done in 2012, so a real recent study looking at giving probiotics to prevent recurrence of chronic pouchitis, which is it's an IBD condition related to it's really common ulcerative colitis after they've had surgery. And so what they found was that, they say dysbiosis, which is a condition of microbial imbalance, has been implicated in the pathogenesis of inflammatory bowel disease. And that's my wife's phone, sorry. Rather than administering antibiotics to treat the microflora with each relapse of pouchitis, the emphasis was placed on preventing Rather than administering antibiotics to treat the microflora with each relapse of pouchitis, the emphasis was placed on preventing chronic flares by administering probiotics to correct dysbiosis. So the research is there to take my approach. They're saying the paradigm was shifted from treatment to prevention and from antibiotics to probiotics. And you can treat with probiotics too, so that's how important that is. So there are a number of randomized, well-controlled human intervention trials, and these are some of the basic things that we know probiotics are really important for. So prevention and a reduction in duration of rotavirus-induced antibiotic-associated diarrhea. So viral diarrhea it's helpful for. We know that if you have dysbiosis, if you don't have the good bacteria in your system, they create toxins. And that can create cancer and other problems. So getting the right bacteria in there is really important. Other, irregular complaints of gastrointestinal tract, so whether it be from, IBS symptoms or constipation, it's just really, really important. Inflammation, even H. pylori, which causes stomach ulcers, and that's in the stomach. So even affecting the bacteria in the small intestine, the large intestine, and even the stomach. So we're seeing a lot of something called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is a dysbiosis in the small intestine. This is a new and upcoming thing. So this is an important point. If you take a probiotic supplement and you notice that you get really gassy and bloated and your stomach blows up, or if you get even more, sometimes it can lead to constipation. Sometimes that has to do with the supplement having the prebiotic FOS, fructooligosaccharides, which is common to be placed in there in the probiotic. And what that does is it's a type of starch that feeds the bacteria, but it also feeds the bacteria in the small intestine if you have that problem. And we're seeing more and more of that problem. So pay attention. I generally do not like to use FOS in supplements. I see too much of that. But particularly if you notice that you're getting bloated. Now it's normal to have a little bit of bloating when you get when you take a new probiotic or eat a new yogurt. As you're getting the new bacteria in there, there is a little bit of a war going on between all the different bacteria until they establish themselves. Sometimes you'll get more gas and bloating, but usually in a week or two, that'll be gone. But if it continues and you have the FOS, it might be from that. So we talked about irritable colon or IBS, constipation. Allergies and atopic disease in infants is huge. So if you can get the right bacteria in infants, or if they're having eczema, that's a big thing that you can do to prevent that, and preventing asthma and all these problems when they're adult is making sure they have the probiotics. So the one thing that I usually recommend for kids is once they can start eating some solids or even the liquids, once they start eating food, is introducing the Stonyfield Farms yogurt. They have the kids yogurt, and they have a lot of different kinds, and we do carry that at Pilgrim's Market, and that's a great thing to do. And then it doesn't always have to be from dairy. You can mix in from coconut yogurt, almond yogurt, goat's yogurt. Like I said, you want to start getting bacteria from all these different sources, and also getting the systems used to different mediums. We know that probiotics can prevent respiratory tract infections, the common cold and influenza. Okay, and this is what I was talking about earlier. We see that certain strains have even been studied to help with weight loss and weight gain. So the next, why I said it's a group, is not just the bacteria and the yeast. There is a yeast that I didn't put in here that everybody should be familiar with, and it's Saccharomyces boulardii, and that is really beneficial for chronic diarrhea. And there's others out there, but there's quite a bit of research on that. Lactoferrin. Anybody heard of lactoferrin? Raise your hand. Okay. So it was first identified as a type of protein that was in milk in the 60s, and there's quite a bit of research on it as having all of this important actions in the body. Just to quickly summarize, what it does is it binds iron and keeps the bad bacteria in your intestines from propagating, so from using that iron, because the bacteria need the iron to expand and to grow, and so it limits that. That's why it's a bad idea to take iron supplements or iron in your multiple vitamin if you are not, if you don't need it. If you're not anemic, be very careful with that because it can feed the bad bacteria and cause dysbiosis. It also causes inflammation. So the lactoferrin, which is we get lactoferrin. It's very high in colostrum, which is the first part of mother's milk, and we get ours from as a supplement. We get it from cow source. And when you're infants and you're exposed to the lactoferrin, we believe that that's one of the ways for the first few days that your body's being protected from all the pathogens because of its strong immune tendencies. So it actually makes the lactoferrin can be turned into something called lactoferricin, which is actually a type of antibiotic as well. It suppresses all the bad types of bacteria, even E. coli and all the different types of bacteria that can cause problems. It can also be used to prevent herpes virus and skin infections, oral thrush, and the flu and pneumonia, and even can help with foot fungus. Let's see what else. H. pylori, gastric infection, urinary tract infections, E. coli, hepatitis C. This was a study that used 3 grams a day for 1 year and showed it suppressed colon cancer. And there's other research that shows that it can be helpful for other types of cancer as well, but particularly colon cancer. But I find it amazingly helpful for reestablishing the good bacteria. So I think it's something that people should be aware of. And this is just showing how it binds to the receptors and can stimulate the white blood cells to go to areas of inflammation, and how it prevents infection and cancer. But it is a really potent anti-inflammatory. Okay. And it also, one of the ways, I'm not going into the details of that, but it also can affect, what they found is that it affects sugar absorption. So that's why it can be really helpful for like diabetes and obesity. And the way that I think it does that, which that abstract didn't go into, was that it supported the right types of bacteria, the good bacteria, so it actually suppressed all the sugar from entering your blood and from the bacteria from going out of balance. Okay, so the next class is, or any questions that you want to ask about probiotics? Yeah?
What did you say FOS was?
Fructooligosaccharides. It's a type of starch. Raise your hand if you've used the Stonyfield Farm yogurt.
Well, I know that.
You should really give it a try. I really like it. It's from the Northeast, so we don't really get all the different varieties that we can get from other makers here. But you definitely don't want to use if you're going to eat a yogurt, you want one that's going to be live. So stay away from those the ones in the general supermarkets that really you don't get any benefit from. Those are sardines, a school of sardine. So we're going to talk about fish oil first. So it is only since the Industrial Revolution that changes in food consumption have occurred rapidly. These changes are reflected in an increased consumption of animal fat and imbalances in the omega-6, omega-3 ratio over the last 100 years. Today, this ratio is reported to be up to at least 10 to 1, or more likely 20 to 25 to 1, and I've seen reports 50 to 1. So we're supposed to have close to a 1-to-1 ratio between omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. We do not. Most people do not, and that's because of the SAD diet and from other farming practices and food industrialization. So what we're seeing is an increase in saturated fat, but more like what we're seeing more of is vegetable oil and omega-6 fatty acids and trans fatty acids. And then, of course, a decrease in omega-3. And trans fatty acids are detrimental to health because they increase LDL, so they basically increase the bad cholesterol and decrease the good cholesterol. They make the platelets aggregate more, so it makes your blood thicker and stickier. And it also decreases HDL, your good cholesterol. Trans fatty acids also decrease or inhibit incorporation of other fatty acids into cell membranes, and this is really important, they inhibit delta-6 desaturase. That's the enzyme that takes like flax oil and converts it into EPA and DHA, the usable part, the omega-3 that you want. So they make omega-3 less available. So after World War I, the modern vegetable oil industry began large-scale production of vegetable oil where hydrogenation was applied to oils in order to solidify them and increase the shelf life. This reduced the omega-3 fatty acids, including alpha-lipoic acid, and leaving a high amount of omega-6. So then also, because of recommendations by health professionals for heart-healthy concerned Americans, we were urged to reduce the use of saturated fatty acids and replace them with vegetable oils, safflower, corn, and soybean oils for frying and baking usage. So these oils contain very high amounts of omega-6 and are very low in omega-3. Agribusiness further compounded the problem. Just with their farming practices, wild animals contain about 5 times more polyunsaturated fatty acids and omega-3s than what is found in domesticated livestock. So 4% of the fat of wild animals consists of omega-3. So we can get omega-3 fatty acids from animals. It's not just wild animals that eat grass. Domestic livestock are fed grains, which are very high in omega-6 and very poor in omega-3, so that's part of the problem. Same thing with vegetables, green leafy vegetables, eggs, and even fish contain less omega-3 fatty acids than those in wild food. So that's where animals bioconcentrate the omega-3s. They can get it from plant sources, from grass, but because they eat so much and they concentrate it into the meat supply. So we can get it, and our ancestors and indigenous cultures and people who still eat that way do get their omega-3s from these sources. Free-range eggs, it needs to be chickens who eat grass will have high amounts of omega-3. I'm not the biggest fan of the flax seeds. The other eggs that say high in omega-3, a lot of times they're given flax seeds to eat, and they're not eating grass, and it's much better for them to eat grass. So at all possible, try to find eggs which are really healthy for you, very high in phospholipids and other nutrients, but they need to be eating grass. Same thing with farm-raised fish. They are low in omega-3. Milk and cheese from animals that graze contain EPA and DHA, while milk and cheese from grain-fed animals do not. So more reasons to eat pasture-raised dairy products. Okay, so when the gastrointestinal tract is, if you have any malabsorption problems, so a lot of people have Crohn's, colitis, IBS, a fast transit time, you're not absorbing the omega-3, so that's another reason that you need to supplement. Celiac disease, which we're seeing more and more a problem. So omega-6 desaturase activity in the liver, which we said is important from taking flax oil and turning it into EPA and DHA, that enzyme, omega-6 desaturase, is vulnerable. It means it doesn't work as well if there's fatty liver, which is really common, if there's a lot of toxins, and particularly if there's alcohol consumption. That will slow down its usage. So it's been said that, I've seen the figure thrown out there, that it can be as high as 70% of people cannot turn flax oil into a usable oil. Now there's other reasons for using flax, like the flax seeds to help balance hormones. Those are the fiber, but not the oil. So I think that's really, really important for people to realize that if you want to use omega-3s for all of their benefits, flax oil is probably not the best way to go, and I usually will recommend fish oil. We also, other things, stress and diets rich in high sugars and trans fatty acids also will do the same thing. So you can see here's the omega-3, the alpha-lipoic acid, which is in flax oil. That gets converted into EPA and DHA by this enzyme delta-6 desaturase. Same thing for the omega-6 for making GLA, which is high in borage and evening primrose oil, and there is a place for that too. So we know that essential fatty acids are critical for any inflammatory condition, things like asthma, eczema, Crohn's disease, cancer, heart disease. All of these things, we know how important omega-3s are. All these studies were looking at, like, our interest in omega-3 started with looking at the Inuit and in Greenland and seeing what they were eating, and just seeing that they had a lower incidence of inflammatory conditions. So when diets are supplemented with omega-3 fatty acids, they will replace the omega-6 in the cell membranes. So it's really, really important to have omega-3 in your cells and in the cell membranes. And so we do know that it takes time, but you can replace that. And it's what's called the eicosanoid metabolism, or the metabolism of fatty acids into these cell mediators, cytokines, that create inflammation or suppress inflammation. And that's how these fats work, by focusing on the mediators between the cells, cell-to-cell communication, and decreasing inflammation. So here's a whole list of things that fish oil is helpful for, and most people are probably familiar with that, but cardiovascular disease, cholesterol, triglycerides, any type of inflammation, autoimmune conditions, really, really critical, diabetes, arthritis, asthma, inflammatory bowel disease, memory, Alzheimer's, all the neurodegenerative conditions, depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, acne, psoriasis, cancer. So, I mean, we keep going, right? So now we understand why it's so important that that's one of our pillars. So some of the critical details about fish oil is the ratios between EPA and DHA. We all know that mothers who are pregnant, that the DHA is really important for the growth of the baby. In fact, breast milk will concentrate the milk so that the milk is high in DHA. So we always assume that we know that's important for the brain and for our nervous system, but we just assume that extrapolated to adults. Well, what it turns out, for most conditions dealing with brain health, like depression and anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, the studies that use a much greater amount of EPA to DHA get much better results. So we have to pay attention to the ratios between EPA and DHA. Even inflammation, EPA seems to be better. Now the body can modulate, and if you don't have enough DHA, it can turn EPA into DHA, and it can go backwards, but when there's a lot of health problems, it's hard to do that. It's not as efficient. So we get much better clinical results by doing that. And so then the question is, how much EPA and how much DHA? And in general, okay, so what does it usually say on a fish oil bottle? How much is like in a capsule? Most people know this because they read their bottle. What does it say on there? It'll say per capsule, how much fish oil? 1,200. Okay, 1,200 or 1,000. Usually it'll say 1,000 milligrams, right? Well, that's not good information. It's 1,000 milligrams of fish oil, but how much EPA and DHA? We need to focus on the amount of EPA and DHA. So always read your labels. Generally, a minimum you want to ingest, if you're gonna go bother to take fish oil, you want to get 500 milligrams, a minimum of EPA and DHA added up. But most people are going to want it to get 1,000, and that's just for overall general health. Because, like I said, unless your diet is really clean, we're just bombarded with things that suppress our omega-3. So at a ratio of 25:1, we need to therapeutically turn that around. Now, if you're symptomatic, if you're in a disease state, we need to use even more. So if there's a lot of inflammation, if there's cancer, if there's Crohn's disease, colitis, if there's depression and bipolar, if you're really struggling with something, we want to get it at least 1,500. Most of the time, I want to get it about 3,000. So you're going to be popping lots of capsules. So you want to look for a good source that you're getting high amounts per capsule. If you're going to take a capsule, I usually have people take liquid fish oil. And in 1 teaspoon of liquid, of a good liquid fish oil, you're going to get about 3,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA. So keep that in mind. And then the other most important thing to know about fish oil is that it should not be rancid. How do we know if fish oil is rancid? Smells. It tastes fishy. You burp it up. Not all the time if you burp it up does that mean it's rancid. Sometimes if your digestive system is really not optimized or working as good as it can, you can burp it up. But most of the time, that's going to be an issue. So most places, the big places out there, the big warehouse stores and pharmacies who are selling this stuff, they know that, and they encapsulate or they enteric coat it. So you're no longer burping it up, but it's the same rancid fish oil. So I want you to, everybody should, whatever fish oil you have, you should taste it. Whether it's a capsule, you bite into it and taste it. If you at all make or dislike the taste, that means it's rancid. A good fish oil won't do that. It won't do that. Okay, you first.
What are some good brands?
So when I'm on the floor, usually what I recommend to people is the Nordic Naturals Ultimate Omega if we were trying to get 3,000 milligrams. There are good brands there. I haven't tried all of them. Carlson's is a good brand. Nordic Naturals is a good brand. There are others. I don't want to necessarily say that all of them are bad, but you need to taste the fish oil and bite into your capsules. So it's just like with sushi, right? Raise your hand if you eat sushi. Okay. Is there a fish taste to sushi? There's none, right? Because it's fresh. As soon as it gets older, like if you get like old seafood, like I grew up, I never ate fish, not at all, and not even fish sticks. And then when I moved to the Northwest, I did my training in Portland. It's the salmon. This area is a salmon capital, right? So I'm like, I'm studying how good it is for you. So like, okay, I'm just going to make myself, and I really didn't like it. Then I kept eating it, and then I tolerated it. Then it was, it was okay. Then I kind of liked it, and then then you crave it and you like it, and then you eat sushi. So, and I was an adult, so tastes can change. You can do these things, but. I forget where I was going with that, but the point is if it's fresh, it doesn't taste fishy. If it's like old seafood that you get at some crappy store or some restaurant, then that it's been out in the air too long, and that's why it has a fishy taste. Yes.
What's the proper EPA to DHA ratio?
So it really depends on the condition. That's where it helps to work with somebody who's knowledgeable in that. But generally, you're going to want to do. I like to do a 6-to-1. Anywhere from 3 to 6-to-1 EPA to DHA if you're going to try to get more EPA. For generalized depression, you do get good results by having sort of a balanced ratio. Most of them are more balanced between EPA and DHA, favoring the EPA side. But there are distinct conditions like anxiety, bipolar. There are a lot of inflammation where you're going to want to do higher amounts of EPA. And it does take some experience to figure out when is the best time to use that. Any more questions?
So you're saying you should have more EPA than DHA, right?
It depends, not for everybody, but there are certain conditions when that's the case. The big conditions are mental emotional conditions, except for like generalized depression. Inflammation, you're going to want to generally have more EPA, but at the same time, if you just get up to 1,000, or like for arthritis or for Crohn's disease, or for a lot of people, I'm actually just using like the Ultimate Omega, or I use a professional line one. I like to use Metagenics. It's a professional line one that's really high. It's about 3,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA. And I get really good results because I'm getting high enough therapeutic levels of EPA and DHA. If you're not getting therapeutic levels, don't expect the fish oil to help.
And you were talking about the liquid was very good. And else cod liver oil?
So cod liver oil, there's a place for it. It's high in vitamin D. It can be high in vitamin A, and that's why your grandparents used to give it to you, is because it was high. They use it as a vitamin D supplement. There's definitely a place for it, but in is it teaspoon or tablespoon? I believe it's 1 tablespoon of cod liver oil. You're getting like 750 milligrams of EPA and DHA. So that may be enough for some people, but not enough for others. But I use that a lot for like athletes, or particularly women who are very active and they kind kind of lose their period and they need more fats in their diet, I like to supplement cod liver oil. Or cancer patients, maybe we'll do that together with a higher EPA supplement to get more fats in their diet. So,
Well, which one did you recommend?
so the Nordic Naturals Ultimate Omega is the one that I like here in the store.
That is not in the tablet.
It's a liquid. It's going to be more expensive, but it's the most cost-effective way to get your EPA and DHA.
And that's in the refrigerator.
It's actually not. It's with the. You don't have to refrigerate until it's opened, and then you want to refrigerate it. Yeah, always refrigerate your liquid fish oil when it's opened. I would even tend to do that with the capsules. Sometimes you don't need to. You have to keep them in a cool place. But if you don't have air conditioning in the summer, you want to put them in the refrigerator. And you can check. I mean, taste them, bite them open. If they start tasting rancid, then you know it's better to have them in the refrigerator. Sometimes the liquid fish oil, even if they've been in the refrigerator, but say you don't go through it as fast as you're supposed to, you don't take it regularly, it can get a little fishy towards the end because you're opening it and exposing it to oxygen. But generally, they last, as long as you take it the way you're supposed to, it won't get too fishy. Or it won't get fishy.
Take the bottle out, open up the lid immediately.
Yeah, I get in trouble because I don't put the fish oil back in the refrigerator
Right away,
fast enough.
Then you won't have that problem with the whole bottle. Yeah, and it goes right away back because he will open it up, do something else, forget the lid. It goes bad. It's being oxidized.
So it's a good lesson that I'm teaching everybody. Put it right in the refrigerator quickly. So GLA, that's a borage oil, black currant oil, evening primrose oil. And they're also helpful for inflammation. They're a different type of omega-6, and there is, it's really helpful for, like, for example, PMS. There's definitely a role for that and for inflammation, for eczema. So that's a type of omega-6 that can be healthy. But generally, if we're trying to correct that ratio, because most people are out of balance, we want to use more omega-3 and supplement fish oil.
How do you test can you do blood work to see what you need?
There are tests, yeah, that you can do fatty acid profiles. There are some specialized companies that do that now. It's a little bit expensive, but we can do that. Now, when I was practicing in New York, I was not able to order those testing. The tests that were really limited. So you get used to, I have clinical experience to know how and who's a good candidate for it. But there are reasons for testing, and there are good tests out there. But I would say do that. Not everybody needs that test. Most people can assume that we're just bombarded with omega-3s and we don't have enough. We're bombarded with omega-6 in our diet, and we just don't get enough omega-3. So, therefore, it's really important to supplement. Everybody should supplement to some extent. You can also eat, wild fish. You can eat salmon, mackerel, sardines, grass-fed game, beef, grass-fed beef. Those types of things. Okay, but we need to get omega-3s back in our diet.
What about olive oil? You use a lot of olive oil.
That does not affect the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. It's a monounsaturated fatty acid, and there's a lot of benefit to that, of course, but it's a whole different animal or oil.
For the fish oil, do you have one that works well for kids? Because if it.
Yeah, there's different, like some of the professional line ones really make a higher strength one, like mixed with fruit. But what I would recommend for kids, and especially start them off young, just use a little bit of that same fish oil I was telling you about, the Nordic Naturals. You don't maybe give them a quarter teaspoon, or depending on how big they are. And you can mix it if, like Lucas will just take it straight, or we mix a little bit of goji juice in with it, and he loves it. We call it a cocktail. We put in a little, it's not a shot glass, it's those little egg warmers. You put a little egg in, well, it's a German thing, but soft-boiled eggs. But so he'll just down it like that. But you could put a little bit of oil in the teaspoon and maybe dip it in a little bit of like all fruit jelly or something like that, and give it to them that way, and make your own. But they do make different ones out there. I would say there's absolutely no reason to give those little like fruit chews that have like 5 milligrams of EPA in it. I mean, there's no point to that. Okay. So while we're on the topic of lipids, I like to talk about phospholipid. So phospholipids, this is a picture of different fat particles that are attached to, the fat is hydrophobic, which means it pushes away water, and there's a hydrophilic head. And they basically group together and form these bilayers in our cell membranes. And it's super important they bind to the fatty acids, to the fish oils, and they're really, really important for our health. So phospholipids are found in all life forms and are the prime building blocks of life. Some phospholipids may be classified as conditionally essential nutrients because enzymes and cofactors are required for their in vivo synthesis. So conditionally essential means that we need them, we need to get them in our diet. We can't make them on our own unless we have the right components. Dietary phospholipid intake on the part of most people in the West has declined, mainly due to increased food refining and processing. Sort of the same story. Foods that are high in phospholipids: eggs, muscle and organ meats, milk, peanut butter. Nice egg yolk. So in that, in the smoothie that we made today, I guess we really didn't go over that, but that's a great way to get these things. When you ask, like for kids, make a smoothie. That smoothie consisted of yogurt. We added the fish oil into it. We added, what kind of, did we add berries to it?
Yeah, the recipe's there. We've got blueberries, lecithin, whey protein.
Okay. And I often will add an egg to it, like a raw egg, to get the yolks. Yeah, and so we use the grass-fed yogurt, and we added whey protein too, which is a really beneficial type of protein, which we're not going to talk that much about today. But I really like whey. Whey is as long as you tolerate dairy, whey is a really good protein to use because it increases your glutathione. It helps your liver function, and the other proteins don't do that. Now, occasionally, most people even sensitive to dairy will do okay with whey, but if you're not, then of course don't use whey. But it is a great protein to use. So if you make a smoothie, your kids wouldn't even know that there was, fish oil in it.
What about rice protein?
Rice protein is a really good protein to use if you have, if you have a lot of allergies, if you're allergic to other types of proteins. It's a fairly hypoallergenic protein, so that's good to use. But it does not increase glutathione, which helps with detoxification, cancer. Whey protein helps with cancer prevention. Whey protein can have some other immune actions as well. Phosphatidylcholine is one of the most important nutrients to consume daily for optimal health. So phosphatidylcholine used to be called lecithin. They used to be synonymous because it's the major phospholipid in lecithin. Raise your hand if you've heard of lecithin before. Okay, see, most of you have. Raise your hand if you heard of chocolate before. So chocolate uses a high amount of lecithin to emulsify, right? Ice cream, they'll add lecithin to it to emulsify, to mix it up and keep it that way, right? So we generally get it from soy. When we're using lecithin as a product, we're usually getting it from soy because it's a really easy way to get it. Soy, of course, is high in it, but it's also, phosphatidylcholine is also found in nuts, seeds, dandelion greens, and egg yolks, foods that we consume too little of to get an optimal intake of phosphatidylcholine. So most adults do not get enough of this valuable nutrient. What makes it,
Do you get that same kind of nutrient on a store-bought egg, like at a grocery store? Are you talking about the eggs that come from?
Yeah, I think, I don't know this for sure, specifically with phosphatidylcholine in the, but with the, with lecithin and also the other phospholipids. I would assume that it's higher, but I don't know that for sure. But here's the thing, don't ever eat a raw egg that's just a commercial raw egg. That's where you get sick from, right? I mean, you're kind of rolling the dice with it. You're not going to get sick, you're not going to get an infection, salmonella, with not a grass-fed egg, but chickens that are raised humanely, that are in the pasture. It's when they're sitting on top of each other and they're pooping on each other and they're pooping on the eggs and they're, those unsanitary conditions. That's where you're going to get salmonella. You're not going to get it just from the local farmer who's, that just doesn't happen. And so it's safe to use an egg that way. You have to assume that you get the eggs from a trusted site. And we know, like in the store like this, we do the research to make sure that the eggs are the way that they say they are. And you know that it's grass-fed. How do you know that it's a grass-fed chicken who's laying those eggs? How do you know if it's a grass-fed egg?
They taste better.
Okay, yeah, they'll definitely taste better, but what's a sure sign?
Brown? Are they brown?
No, the brown comes from the type of chicken that they are.
Is it the color of the yolk?
Yeah, what color is it going to be if it's grass-fed?
Bright orange.
Bright orange, it's yellow.
The eggy, it's orange.
Yeah, orange and yellow and really bright. And if you do make a cake with it, it's like fluorescent, right? So that's, you can judge, and I always do that wherever I get my eggs from, even if it says grass-fed. Now, so you want it to be bright. Now in the winter, the chickens aren't getting the same grass. They're not going to be as high in the beta carotene. That's what gives it that color, right? Or the carotene. So don't expect it to be so vibrant in the winter. But as often as possible, try to eat eggs. And what's the best way to eat your egg? Okay, well, raw, but that's not the most important thing. Soft boiled. Yeah, you want the yolk to not be oxidated. You don't want the yolk to be cooked or to be, how it firms up. So scrambled eggs, it's exposed to air, it firms up, it oxidizes it. So that's why it is really great to do the soft boiled eggs or poached eggs or, over easy, because then you're also, the heat's not tampering with the fats that are in the yolk. The protein's okay, that's okay. But you really don't want a super fried egg anyways. So phosphatidylcholine has a dramatic impact on our health, particularly the health of the liver. Phospholipids are a class of lipids that are a major component of all cell membranes, as they can form lipid bilayers. The structure of the phospholipid molecule generally consists of hydrophobic tails and hydrophilic heads. Hydrophobic means water-loathing, water-hating, and hydrophilic means water-loving. And it's usually found with cholesterol molecules. So cholesterol is part of that. And the cholesterol is what makes it fluid, so that things can float around in this lipid bilayer, which is really, really important for cell-to-cell communication, for cells to transmit their signals to the other cells. And it's like a local hormone signal. So that's a picture of like of a bilayer, and they all line up. And then you have cholesterol floating in between them, and you get these other proteins floating between them. And that's what separates our cells and separates us from the outside world. It's the single most important nutrient for promoting liver health. Phosphatidylcholine helps the liver do many of its jobs better: nutrient assimilation, hormone balancing, toxin elimination. It protects the liver against damage caused by alcohol, pollutants, viruses, medications, mushroom poisoning, radiation treatments. It's very valuable in the treatment of different forms of hepatitis. It's useful in the treatment of a wide range of liver ailments, hepatitis, fatty liver, and cirrhosis. Super, super important. I've helped people who've had really high liver function enzymes using this among other things, but phosphatidylcholine is really, really important for that. It helps protect the liver from damage caused by alcohol. Oh, I guess I did that slide twice. Really helpful for PMS, fibroid tumors, and other female hormone disorders by helping to balance the hormones. The liver is so important for balancing hormones, and it helps that. It helps prevent estrogen-related cancers, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer. It improves mental energy and memory. It lowers cholesterol and homocysteine. It prevents plaque buildup in arteries by optimizing fat metabolism. It slows the aging process by protecting cell membranes from damage. It helps enhance the digestion and assimilation of all nutrients. So you mix what's the problem with most, okay, raise your hand if you've heard of curcumin. Turmeric, right? So I have people come up to me, well, it's really important to take your turmeric with olive oil so that you can absorb it. We know there's so many benefits to curcumin and turmeric for helping with inflammation, helping with cancer and arthritis and Crohn's disease and all these inflammatory conditions. But you have to be able to absorb it, and so that's why traditionally it was used probably with ghee, which is clarified butter, because it's an Ayurvedic herb. But you hear people like Dr. Oz talked about, you need to use it with olive oil, which I think helps. But we know it's so much more improved with phosphatidylcholine. In fact, there's a company that makes it. It's called Mariva, where it's phosphatidylcholine bound into these micelles, or like these small lipid bilayers with the curcumin in it, and your body's going to absorb that much better. Mariva is a form of curcumin. Now, different companies carry it. Thorne had the exclusive rights to that for a year or two. Thorne is the professional line supplement company that's in Priest River. It helps it's important for chemical messengers, acetylcholine, which travels between nerve cells, creating and calling up memories. So many people notice better memory when they take phosphatidylcholine. It's important in treating Alzheimer's disease. They know that Alzheimer's disease, that there's a deficiency or decrease in acetylcholine. Other movement disorders like tardive dyskinesia, even it's helpful for colitis and malaria. There's a lot of research on there. And then there's a couple other phospholipids that I won't get into. So at the very least, you want to do phosphatidylcholine or just a lecithin supplement. Like if you just get a lecithin supplement or the lecithin granules, they're going to be behind phosphatidylcholine, but then they're going to be also higher they're going to contain the other phospholipids like inositol and phosphatidylinositol, phosphatidylserine. There's some other ones that are also important. Now there's a role for supplementing with specific phospholipids like inositol. I get amazing results working with people who have anxiety using inositol. I've used it with PTSD and bipolar, and it works really well together with fish oil, particularly high amounts of EPA. Phosphatidylserine it really helps with memory, cognition, and mood. There's studies done in the elderly. I've used it a lot with ADHD. Okay, so moving on to the fat-soluble vitamins. And Brigitte, why don't you start heating up that over there. So as a tool, vitamin D can help us fight infections and so raise your hand if you know about vitamin D, and like it's in the news, right? How can we not know about vitamin D? Within the last 5 to 10 years, there's been an explosion of research about vitamin D and how we're all deficient in it. And if you've gone to any of my other talks, or if you're interested in it, if you go onto YouTube, you can get all my talks on there from our website at Pilgrim's Market. But I spend a lot of time talking about vitamin D and vitamin K2. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time now just to go over that. But anybody who has ever spoken to me out on the floor, you know that it's one of the most important things that you can take is vitamin D, but you need to take vitamin K2 with it, and we'll talk about why. But we know that vitamin D is helpful for multiple sclerosis, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, colon, breast, skin, prostate, you name it, osteoporosis, cavities, lupus, and rheumatoid arthritis, and depression, right? Okay, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you know how important vitamin D is. So some of the things where we get vitamin D and some of these fat-soluble vitamins. There are over 47,000 peer-reviewed studies on vitamin D. And the most recent entries on its powerful role in lupus, in fractures, osteoporosis, breast cancer. And yet, despite vitamin D's promise, scientists still don't know what optimal levels may truly be. It's important to go over what the test, like if you get your lab test done, anybody know what the lab test comes back saying what normal should be?
30 up to 50.
Well, the lab test will come back and say you want to be over 30. Just about everybody we test who's not taking high amounts of vitamin D is going to be like 18, 20. Most people, I mean, a lot of people will be down in 10 or in the teens or sometimes even lower. And sometimes those are people even taking like 1,000 or 2,000 IUs of vitamin D. I will spend some time and answer your vitamin D questions too at the end, okay? But we know that it can take like 4,000 to 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day just to keep your levels where they are. So it's a really good idea to get your vitamin D levels tested. What most people and most doctors who are in the know about vitamin D will say, you want to get your levels up to a minimum of 50, probably around 60, 70, 80 would be better. But certainly we're going to do a lot better if we can get those numbers up well past 30. But you don't want them to go too high. I mean, it can even be safe in the 90s, but you generally want to kind of keep them below 90. Sometimes higher, it can lead to some problems. So you do want to be a little bit careful with vitamin D.
Does it wash
It'll accumulate over time, and then it'll also decrease then in the winter when we don't get our sunlight. And that's why we get, that's why it's linked to the flu, and why we get epidemics of the flu. So why is it, like most colds can come and go all the time, but why is it that we get this flu on this in the winter all over the world? Why doesn't, with all the plane travel and everybody's exposure to it, why does it happen in the winter? It's because our immune systems are down, because the vitamin D levels dropped everywhere. You get the vitamin D levels up, that's the best way to prevent the flu.
What is vitamin D3? What's the difference?
So vitamin D can come as a supplement in two forms, vitamin D2 and vitamin D3. D2 is a vegetarian source. They get it, where do they get it from? Well, it's a vegetarian source. Vitamin D3, it comes from, a lot from cod liver oil or animal products, right? But the source that is native to our bodies is D3. When you get a doctor's prescription for 50,000 IUs of vitamin D, once or twice a week, that's vitamin D2. And it was always assumed, well, your vitamin D levels go up, and if you look at the fraction between vitamin D3 and D2, if you're taking high levels of vitamin D2, your D2 levels are going up, not D3. Well, you're starting to see more and more research saying D3 is better than D2. D2 is not the normal vitamin D in our body, and it may not be functioning to the same extent that the D3 is. So if you're going to supplement a vitamin D, I would recommend that you do the D3, if possible. So people have there's genetic variabilities, there's differences in skin color, and all these different factors as to getting your vitamin D levels up. So that's why, to know how much vitamin D levels to take, you really should get a test. You can ask your doctor for that test. Unfortunately, most insurance won't cover vitamin D testing, even if you've got a good insurance, unless you already know that you have a low vitamin D status and you're trying to get it up. So for just screening, the insurance isn't paying for it anymore, and it just seems like such a shame because it could really help out so many people. But we do vitamin D testing here. We can test children. We can test, it's a finger prick. We send it away. We do I think it's, if you don't see me as a patient, to just being able to offer it to people who are on the floor, or people, customers who come in and want to know their vitamin D status and don't have a way of getting that tested. I believe it's like $100 for the test, and it includes a 15-minute consultation with me to go over those results. So just so you know, there are good ways to get your vitamin D levels tested, and a good time to do it is in the winter to see where your levels are, and then also in the summer. And vitamin D is really important. But what we're also realizing is that it's essential to have these other fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin A deficiency is more common than we realize because vitamin A-rich foods are rarely eaten. Vitamin A, people were concerned about vitamin A toxicity, but that's really overblown. And there's new research that shows that we don't convert beta-carotene into vitamin A. Beta-carotene is like a pro-vitamin A, but as many as 50% of people are really poor at doing that, and that can create products, intermediaries that are not, where it's not vitamin E, but it's actually a toxic free radical product, and it could raise your risk of cancer and other problems. So it is really a good idea to get vitamin A in our food, either through diet or through taking a vitamin A supplement, which is different than beta-carotene. Vitamin A is high in full fat milk, so whole milk, butter, eggs, liver. So full fat milk, butter, eggs, liver, it's a high source of vitamin A because those are healthy fats. And those things are often avoided by people who are worried about weight and cholesterol, right? As an important aside, there's also vitamin K deficiency, which doesn't create problems with clotting, but it's important for its interaction with vitamin D. So vitamin K2, raise your hand if you heard of vitamin K2. So just as the research is exploding on vitamin D, the research is now exploding on vitamin K2. The only way that we get vitamin K2 in our diets is through grass-fed dairy, grass-fed meats, grass-fed chicken eggs. And it's really important for working together with vitamin D and making sure that these proteins take the calcium and put it into your bones. And it also is really important for like cancer prevention and autoimmune as vitamins. You know, one of the ways that they work, or the main way that they work, is by working with enzymes to make them function right. And enzymes are proteins that have a function that creates something in your body. So what we're seeing is like women who are concerned about osteoporosis and the doctors tell them to take calcium, they're taking high amounts of calcium, and we're starting to see that we're seeing more heart attacks. And as research is showing that it's related to the calcium intake, and even with the vitamin D intake, but it's because they're not getting vitamin K2 in their diet. We don't have enough vitamin K2 to make sure that the calcium goes into the bones. And it's also these other fat-soluble vitamins work synergistically. So because we don't have it in our diet enough, vitamin K2 is essential to supplement or to make sure it's in your diet. It has to be grass-fed, though. The cows and the butter, the milk, and the dairy, they all have to be grass-fed because it's associated with the beta-carotene. The more yellow it is, like the butter, the more yellow a butter is, the more carotene it has, the more fat-soluble vitamins it has in it, the more vitamin A it has in it. If you have a deficiency in vitamin D, it can create a deficiency in vitamin A and vice versa. Or I'm sorry, excess vitamin D can create a deficiency in vitamin A, excess vitamin A can create a deficiency in vitamin D, and that's how all these fat-soluble vitamins work together, is to prevent toxicity. So a lot of the concern about toxicity of vitamin D is likely prevented by having vitamin K2 with it, and vitamin A. You had a question. Oh, there's a gentleman behind you.
So, is earth balance as good as regular butter?
I don't know what's in earth balance, but I would say no. No, butter's better. I had a whole lecture where we talked about cholesterol and we talked about these, whole milk and dairy and these saturated fats and how they're beneficial. And so, if you're interested in that, you can get that on YouTube. Vitamin E also seems to play an important role as well, working with vitamin A and D as an antioxidant. Yes?
How much vitamin A per day?
Yeah, I don't know if I can give you a recommendation on that per se, but I always like to include, I believe it's like, I think it's like 2,000 IUs. I like to use a capsule of, if I'm going to supplement vitamin D, I like to use a capsule that has vitamin K2 in it, and it also has, so the amount of K2 that you want is at least 45 micrograms of vitamin K2, the MK7. There's a few different types, MK7, MK4. The MK7 is sort of like a sustained release, and it can, you just need to do it once a day and it lasts throughout. MK4 actually comes from the tobacco plant, and you have to take it throughout the day, but there is quite a bit of research on MK4. MK7 comes from natto. So the amount is, you want to get anywhere from 45 micrograms as a minimum to probably about 100 micrograms, maybe even more, 150 a day. But if you get included in your diet, then you don't have to be as good with that.
And the vitamin A?
About I believe it's 2,000. I'm not sure on numbers. I think there's 2,000. We don't have the supplement that I use is a physician line one. We don't have one that has it all together, that has all the fat-soluble vitamins for a vitamin D supplement. We do have a vitamin D supplement from Solaray that has vitamin D and K2 together. We have multiple K2 supplements, and we have multiple vitamin A supplements. I just think it's important to have at least a minimal amount of vitamin A, and then it's going to be important for us to have that in our diet. So the things about vitamin A, D, K, and E is that the research is stunningly clear. These fat-soluble vitamins work together. And the newest research shows that these lipid-based molecules are all powerful antioxidant nutrients which are intricately bound through shared receptors. They balance and enhance each other, and as a group, they profoundly influence genes, immunity, inflammation, and the healthy balance of lipids in our body. Okay, so a lot of what I'm going to talk about next is through this book, Deep Nutrition by Dr. Catherine Shanahan. We do have these books for sale here. We're just going to spend a little bit of a time on it. I'm going to try to really introduce some of her concepts, and we're going to be having her come likely and give a Skype presentation for us, a Skype lecture. Before I get too into this, so I really wanted to ask, what is the thread running throughout this presentation? Remember I told you at the beginning, kind of pay attention. What's sort of the key thing that's linking all of these together?
Synergy, the working together of everything is what I see.
Okay. Balance, synergy. Anybody else? I heard some other things mentioned.
Eat healthy and nutrition.
Eat healthy nutrition. Okay, yeah.
Grass-fed is what I got a lot of everything.
Grass-fed, right? Grass-fed. What else did I talk a lot about nutritionally? Eggs, beef, fish, organ meat. What do you want to say?
Cheese.
Cheese. Very good. Yeah. Okay. Even the probiotics, right? Okay. So this is the next step. So I talked about my 3 pillars of supplements, right? So I think it is a good idea to supplement because we're so deficient in them. We need to supplement. But where I'm coming from really is a deeper understanding of what we need to do to correct these imbalances, to create harmony. And what that is eating, changing the way we fundamentally eat. And that includes eating these things that we just talked about. And these are Dr. Shanahan's 4 pillars of nutrition. So let me just describe for her. This is the intro to her book. Our ancestors would be acutely aware, far more so than the average person today, how lack of nourishment affects growth and impairs health. Among indigenous peoples today, specific foods are known to influence a child's constitution, and couples and their families go to great lengths to acquire those foods before conception and continuing through childhood and adolescence. So what that's saying is all these indigenous cultures are so focused on what they eat, what goes into their body. And they do it because they know it's going to give their children the best chance to survive and the best chance to be healthy. Our ancestors could have done the same kinds of things. So not just indigenous cultures, our ancestors of who we are going back thousands of years. So in doing so, in exploiting the earth's wild abundance to obtain a nutritional bounty, they would engineer bodies of extraordinary health and beauty. Today we owe the length of our limbs, the shape of our eyes, the proper function of our organs, and all that makes us human to our ancestors' collective skill, to their skill in knowing what is essential to eat, what is the common thread of all these indigenous cultures. And that's what deep nutrition is about, and that's what Dr. Shanahan really goes into in outlining. So it identifies the foods and techniques common to every culture, and it divides them into 4 categories called the 4 pillars of world cuisine. From the Maasai and ancient Egyptian to the Japanese and the French, you'll learn how the same 4 pillars form the foundation of all the healthiest diets. Using the latest research in physiology and genetics, the authors explain why your family's health depends on eating these foods. So I think the next slide shows those 4 pillars. Let's just see if we remember what they are. What's somebody name a pillar?
Lipids.
Okay, I heard probiotics, lipids,
Fish oil.
lipids. Fish oil is a lipid. What else? Okay.
I want to say something.
Cheese. Cheese.
Cheese.
Okay. So anyways, we kind of went through these things anyways. It was kind of like the basis of why I was talking about those and why I think they're important. And it really, I've had her book for a few months, and then I knew I was going to talk about this, and so finally I was able to read through most of the book. I'm like, this is just absolutely amazing. And it really parallels all these things that I've kind of gravitated to on my own through practicing over the last 8 years. So nutritionally, what we need to do to get these vitamins, we need to eat meat on the bone. We need to have organ meat. We need fermented and sprouted foods. We need fresh and raw vegetables and raw dairy. So last night, I had Brigitte make bone broth soup. We got I'll let Brigitte describe how we made it. And we also made, because a lot of people are afraid to eat organ meat. So we made liver canoodle or liver dumplings. So we brought those in. This is an Austrian tradition, or this is the way that the Austrians cooked this way. The Austrians in the mountains were indigenous culture up until rather recently. And they ate the same way. They followed these same 4 pillars. So Brigitte made that, and she also made a sprouted grain bread for us to have with the soup. And while I'm talking now, is the soup ready? Okay, why don't we pass it out and for everybody to taste. And I'm still going to I have a couple more slides I want to go through, and then we can have a few more questions as we wind down. Yes?
What is it about the sprouted? Why is sprouted great?
I think I'm going to talk about it a little bit, and if I don't answer your question, then we can talk. And this is pasture-fed butter. Thanks for coming. You're welcome. Okay, I recommend trying the liver. This is one of my favorite. It's really good. It might take you a little bit to get used to it, but like I said, your taste buds can change, and it's really healthy for you. And this is a pretty good way, a pretty tasty way to do it. And this butter, even if you need to start with butter, this is the best butter in the world. It's the Organic Valley pasture-fed butter, and we carry it here, and it's so yummy, and it's so healthy. Pasture-fed. It's Organic Valley. It says pasture on the front. It's a green label, and the label's up here.
It's so good, you can eat it straight. I recommend that. But
Who eats it straight? Anybody know anybody who eats the butter straight?
You do.
I
You do. Okay, so just a couple more slides. Thanks for bearing with me. So these are some passages that I took from her book. We have her book for sale here. She will be coming and giving a lecture. I think it is one of the best reads that you can do. I want to mention this too because everybody, like I said, a lot of people function on beauty and weight loss, and she goes through to introduces the concept of what we eat determines, not only how our body functions, but how we look, and the health and the vibrancy and the beauty of our children depends on what we eat, and she really goes into elaborate detail on that. And it's a really, really great read. It's very easy to read, and I think once you pick it up, you won't be able to put it down. And she does go through some recipes. You can also go onto her website, Dr. Kate, K-A-T-E, or what is it? No, so DrCate.com. Okay, so don't overcook your meat. Overcook tangled and fused together during a wild, heat-crazed chemical orgy. So overcooking your food and your meat particularly really takes out a lot of its nutrition and creates problems. That's what we see with those steaks that are, why grilling causes cancer. Try to keep your cooking meat below 170 degrees. Undesired reactions create toxins and destroy nutrients. She talks a lot about the great benefit of slow cooking and what is it? I guess they're called slow cookers, right? Using slow cookers.
crock pots.
Yeah, crock pots. Steak should be juicy and red, so you want it to be more on the medium or to the raw side, on that side of the fence. Traditionally indigenous cultures, we didn't cook our meat. We actually, like other animals, you made the kill and you ate it raw, like sushi, right? That's why we have steak tartare and beef tartare, and all these. That's a cultural thing. That's what cuisine is about. What cuisine is about. Heritage of all these traditions of knowing what is best for your body to eat, and then passing that down and making it in a tasty way. So, like the soup has the bones in it with the bone marrow. And that's what gives it this taste, and that's what gives it so much of its benefit. Okay, we'll get you a slice. It's coming. It's coming. By slow cooking, like the ligaments and the bone and the fat and the skin, it releases glycosaminoglycans. Anybody know a good example of a glycosaminoglycan? People spend lots of money of it for arthritis.
Yeah.
Glucosamine. Okay. So this is gonna help your bones, your joints. These are high in the fat-soluble nutrients like A, D, E, and K. Organic pasture-raised meat bioconcentrates these vitamins. Bone stock is high in these glycosaminoglycans. It protects the joints, bones, skin, arteries, hair. It can stimulate the growth of new, healthy collagen and help repair damaged joints. It's very, very important for childhood to establish strong musculoskeletal system. Osteoporosis is a pediatric condition. It's not geriatric. It's because our bones are not healthy when we're not being raised right. And our bones aren't strong from the beginning, so once we start getting older, then they deteriorate. But if you build strong bones in the beginning, you're not going to fracture them. So what are our children eating? It's the standard American diet. It's soda, it's sugars, it's vegetable fats. Are they eating organ meats? Well, maybe in hot dogs, but they got all the nitrates and other problems in it. It's not the good types of fats. There's a lot of problems with eating just regular hot dogs. Now we do carry pasture, organic, raised, painted hills. Is that we can get hot dogs and sausages that have these pieces in it, and there's nothing wrong with it. A lot of people get turned off by the fact that we've got them in the sausages. That's part of traditional cultures. The Austrian culture, you go there and they've got all these beautiful sausages hung up, and blood sausages, and it was great before they put the nitrates in it. I can't remember the exact statistics, but you should know this for your children and grandchildren. Eating like one hot dog a week, something like that. I can't remember the exact figure, but what most kids are eating, or well over that, increases your rate of blood cancers, leukemia and lymphomas, and I believe it's brain cancer. I can't remember the exact statistics, but you need to be really careful with that. Kids need to eat better.
Is there a healthy substitute for a hot dog?
Yeah, we carry it here. It's grass-fed, pasture-fed, organic, nitrate-free hot dogs and sausages.
When I was raised in Michigan, and we had quite a few neighborhood fresh markets, meat markets. They made their own blood sausage and a lot of other different types of sausages. So we had access to that all the time. It was very good.
Yeah, but the quality is different now. Because now they're adding the nitrates to it. Now it's not organic. Now it's not grass-fed.
It's all fresh market.
But when you do this, it's very important that it comes
Yeah, like we said, because we said that the animals will bioconcentrate these nutrients, but they also bioconcentrate poisons and toxins and pesticides and antibiotics, right? So that's why it's important that you get your meat that's organic and grass-fed. So organ meat is rich in vitamins, especially fat-soluble vitamins, which can be stored in our own fat reserves for months. The liver is the storage bank for protein, sugar, vitamins, and minerals. Of course, if the cow is sickly or raised on depleted soil, the savings bank of the liver is likely depleted as well.
I wanted to say something too. When we were in Alaska, my wife was raised in Alaska. I was there for 10 years. But the Alaska natives in the spring, when they harvest caribou, they have a special season because you're not allowed to harvest caribou that time of the year. What they do is they take it and they boil down all of the bones and the meat, and they make a paste out of the marrow and everything, and then they eat that. Mm-hmm. And that's their spring cathartic every year.
Yeah.
So good on Good.
So you will absolutely you'll love this book because it goes through many stories like that. Let me finish, and then we'll have a little bit more of a discussion. I'm almost there. This is just a chart that's looking at the vitamins in this case, in apple, broccoli, and in liver, right? So vitamin A, look at that, 10,602 parts per gram. And look at like only 7. I'm not exactly sure what the ratio is from. This is from her book. But you can see, quite all the vitamins are concentrated in the liver. You're like 217 verse 4 for folic acid, or verse 108 for broccoli. Pantothenic acid, which is really important for adrenal glands. 4.57 versus 0.08. Magnesium is high. So organ meat and liver is really, really important.
But the liver has all the toxins.
No, not if it's healthy meat, right? Not if it's grass-fed, not if they're not given antibiotics, not if they're in the standard. Don't eat organ meat from conventional farming practices. Now, yes, we will concentrate some of the toxins because we don't live in a clean world, right? Because we're all exposed to it. But this will far outweigh, the benefits will far outweigh if you get it from a clean place, who aren't spraying. There'll be some toxins, yes, but your body is going to be much healthier in being able to process that.
Boy, you're really hammered there, Michael.
So you asked me about fermentation and sprouting. For the first 10,000 years of wheat and grain cultivation, the technology to crush open the kernels did not exist. And so for the majority of human history, life-giving bread was made not with flour, but with partially germinated seeds, sprouted seeds. This bread is made with sprouted wheat flour. And this is an Austrian recipe. Fresh and raw. So fresh greens, vegetables, herbs, and spices. And so some of those might be better raw, but some of them will be better lightly cooked. Like, for example, the vitamin A in carrots is you're not going to have access to that if you just juice it. It needs to be cooked. So we make a lot of, like a traditional Austrian recipe was taking the carrots and lightly steaming them and then adding vinegar and olive oil and maybe some onions to it and making a salad out of it. We do that with a lot of vegetables. In Chinese medicine, we say it's not good to eat raw vegetables or to eat a lot of it because it can hamper your spleen and stomach, your digestive organs to break it down and absorb it. So they knew that you needed to steam it and just lightly steam it. And that's like thousands of years of Chinese dietetics that they knew to do that. Our genes have been infused with real dairy products for 10,000s of years. Milk may be this is Dr. Shanahan. Milk may be the single most historically important food to human health. Not just any milk, mind you, but raw milk from healthy, free-to-roam, grass-fed cows. The difference between the milk you buy in the store and the milk your great-great-great-grandparents enjoyed is unfortunately enormous. If we lived in a country where raw milk from healthy, pastured cows were still a legal product and available as ready as, say, soda or a handgun, healthier, and I'd see fewer elderly patients with hunched backs and broken hips. If you are lucky enough to live in a state where raw milk is available in stores and you don't buy it, you are passing up a huge opportunity to improve your health immediately. We are fortunate that we do carry raw milk here. So I encourage that. And we carry cheese that is raw. And we have all kinds of raw fermented vegetables, like Bubby's brand pickles, and we have kimchi and sauerkraut and kombucha and kefir and all these things that we talk about. And somebody asked me about the importance of sprouting, like for example grains. It activates the starch and it turns it into a vegetable. So it's a much more complex carbohydrate. So it's like you're eating a vegetable. And traditionally, they could not, or historically, they couldn't break open those seeds. They didn't have the technology, so they would sprout them. And we have tons of types of sprouted grain breads in this store. And you can make your own sprouted grain breads. And you can take your own grains and sprout them yourselves and make breads and other things with them. So, well, you make a flour with it. And then if you'd like, Brigitte can share with you her recipes for making what we have here tonight.